Cactus leather is a relatively new vegan leather with a lot to offer. It is a faux material made of biodegradable, environmentally friendly, and sustainable materials. A key element is the nopal cactus. The leaves are used to formulate this new material structure that is then combined with polyurethane and recycled materials to create this cactus leather. So let's look at a little bit more about the history of it and what makes it unique. Cactus leather first came to the market in 2019 after the company Deserto premiered it at the International Leather Fair in Linapale, Milan. It was the byproduct of Adrian Lopez Velarde and Marte Cesares, who had experience working with leather and faux leather in the fashion and automotive industries. They noted excessive waste and thought there had to be a more environmentally friendly alternative to the current faux and natural leathers. Faux leather is primarily made out of plastic, and for natural leathers, a lot of energy goes into the tanning process. So with this in mind, they embarked on a 2-year process of developing cactus leather. And after 2 years of research and development with their global partners as involved as well, they patented their process of making the cactus leather out of the nopal cactus. The result was a breathable and sustainable faux leather with some pretty unique properties. Let's take a look at this material close up to get an idea of what it's really like. Looking at the top, we see a relatively consistent structure. There is a pattern imparted into it, and it looks almost like natural leather. We could see some of those marks where you can imagine the hair may have been before the tanning process or things like that. And essentially, it has kind of a leather look, and it also has a bit of a texture to it. Looking on the bottom, we see that textile backing. And so we'll dive into the production process in a moment. However, it's important to see this to get an idea beforehand. When the cactus fibers are ground and mixed together to create that top layer, they are then bound to this material layer below it. And so where on a natural leather, you're going to have those leather fibers. Here, we have these fibers that are below the surface. So it's really interesting because the top looks kind of like natural leather and feels like it a little bit. And then the bottom, you have a very different, more fabric-y kind of fiber to it. Pretty cool. Now let's take a look at the section, and here you go. So in natural leather, obviously you have these striations and the layering of those fibers. And in here, in cactus leather, you can clearly see how this is comprised. In the bottom, we have that fabric structure. And then as we get higher up towards the top layer, you can see that blended material that includes the cactus fibers. And that results in the relatively thicker top layer that is exposed. So it's really cool. It looks totally different than any kind of regular leather fiber. And here's how that structure kind of stacks up. But similar to leather, the top layer is a little bit denser, as you could see, than the middle layer, which has a little bit of a larger porous section to that composite material. So pretty interesting. So let's take a little bit of a look at the production process of cactus leather. We talked about it being made from the nopal cactus, and it's more commonly called the prickly pear cactus. So maybe you're familiar with one, the other, or both. And typically, the process will begin by harvesting the mature leaves of the cactus, leaving the cactus and its newer leaves intact. So it's relatively sustainable in that way. The leaves are then washed, cleaned, and mashed. And that mash is spread out over plastic barriers and left out in the sun so it can dry. Once that drying process is complete, the mashed cactus leaves are then ground into a fine powder and mixed with a polyurethane to make a synthetic material that looks and feels like leather. So yes, a lot of faux leathers are fully polyurethane based, PU. Some are also PVC. However, the cactus leather uses some of that while also integrating these more sustainable fibers. So it's a little bit of a hybrid between a faux leather, and a totally natural leather. Looking at production volume, as of this video, they're capable of producing around 600,000 linear yards a year. It's produced mainly in Mexico, which is the largest exporting country of it. And it's currently being sold in different areas around the world. And so more and more countries will begin to be importing this for use in different products and different lines of goods. Cost is around $6.50 to around $10 per square foot. There are different colors that are available, and different densities as well. So that's some of the variations in pricing there, as well as where you're getting it from. Looking at the pros, Cactus leather can be a great alternative for a couple of different reasons. One, it's made up primarily of 92% of plant-based materials, and it uses a biopolyurethane. It's a little more sustainable than other leathers. It's relatively durable, which is great. It has a unique texture pattern on top that looks similar to natural leather, but it's still kind of its own look and feel. And it also uses very little water to produce. As the cactus survives in arid environments, and aside from the initial cleaning during the processing, the actual manufacturing process for cactus leather uses relatively little water compared to, natural leather tanning and that process. Some of the cons to cactus leather, it's not going to be as durable, as a natural vegetable tan leather. It's pretty durable, but it won't be, that necessarily, decades or hundreds of years of consistent strength and durability from what we've seen thus far. There's currently limited availability. Obviously, it's a newer product, so it'll take a little more time to get out there in the market. And so maybe a little trickier to find it for now, but definitely worth looking. And also, it hasn't been around that long, so it hasn't stood the test of time per se to see, how is a leather good that we make today going to look in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, from this material. So it does have some positive characteristics so far, but we just haven't had the time to see yet how it's gonna, last from day-to-day use. Looking at the good uses for cactus leather, some of the popular things we could make are shoes, bags, jackets, wallets, keychains, any kind of small personal leather goods and accessories. They're great candidates for cactus leather. It's relatively soft and flexible, so it'll work well for those. You may even try it for clothing and things like that. It's a relatively versatile material, and so factoring in other elements of good product design, depending if it is say clothing or a case or something, got to keep those in mind. But that said, it's a pretty variable product that can be used to explore a lot of different leather goods. And tips for working with it. First and foremost, probably not going to be using any dyes with it because it does have that surface that includes the biopolyurethane and the cactus fibers. It's not going to be very receptive to dyes. It can be painted on top, since painting is essentially applying a pigment over the material itself. Although, paints can obviously wear and come apart and things like that. So if you're looking to make something of a particular color, definitely check out the colors that they've got because there's a variety of them out there, that they make from the factory. If you're going to use any kind of a cleaner or cleanser, avoid using harsh chemicals and solvents because they can actually make the material separate a little bit from the backing. So to keep that structural integrity intact, use gentle cleaners and any kind of a chemical or solvent around it. And then if you're making something with an edge, consider folding or wrapping the edges, and stitching rather than leaving that edge exposed. It may delaminate or peel. I haven't seen it do that just yet, but just kind of thinking, since there isn't a whole lot of data and experience yet on this material, just something to keep in mind is how those edges are going to react, to crafting and things like that. So there you have it. A pretty cool cactus leather from the Deserto manufacturer. Really innovative. I think it's a cool way to start to explore, alternative and variable materials in this space that can still have some unique functions that are maybe even different than natural leather, while also offering, some similarities in terms of, look and feel and texture and things like that. So if you're looking to explore a different material for your next project, you might want to give cactus leather a try.